Hi everyone, it's Tony Tonkin here from Things That Matter. Just talking again about anger management and how we manage our anger and how we can best deal with it in ways which are constructive and which are going to assist all those people around us. So thanks for joining with us again. I hope you enjoy this particular session. I hope you use what you hear. I hope that perhaps you can contact me and talk to me about any of the ideas that you have or any of the successes that you have while using any of the ideas that we discuss today. So today we're primarily going to be looking at how to break the cycle. So we all experience moments where we become angry, feel angry, and we act that behaviour out in ways which are harmful to the people that generally we love the most. So today we're going to be looking at that and finding ways to deal with it a little bit differently and break that cycle. So you may remember in the last session we discussed the anger cycle in particular and how you go from an explosion through to thinking about what it is that you've done, down to the false calm, that sense that you're trying to take responsibility for whatever has happened, but you're not actually dealing with it in any significant way, and then moving back up to the build-up and then another explosion. And how we discussed that for some people that happens really quickly. It can happen within a matter of hours, in fact. For others it can happen weekly or monthly or maybe even once a year. The point is, when it does happen, it impacts those people that we care about the most, and it causes people to feel fearful of us. So it's about how to ensure perhaps that doesn't happen again. So in order to do that, we're just going to go through a number of slides and talk about them, and then you can give me feedback as to how you view some of this stuff and whether or not you think it's helpful. So I guess the most important thing that we should understand is know what provokes you and identify your thought patterns at the time. So think about, what am I thinking right now? How did this happen? Why did I behave the way that I did? What could I have done that was different, that would have been more important, and that perhaps wouldn't have harmed the people around me the most? And did I have a space between what I was thinking and how I chose to behave? And could I have, in that space, no matter how small, could I have made a decision that would have been more helpful to the person that I was interacting with? So we need to be able to think about that. So identify what it is that you're thinking. A lot of people will say they don't think, that they just act. Well, that's not always true, I think. I think that most of the time we think about what's happening around us first, and then we build up, and then we explode. For some people, they just simply believe that they explode. They don't. There is a thought pattern. We think about something first, and then we choose to act. So it's about what we're thinking, while we're thinking what we're thinking. And even though this sounds simplistic, I can assure you that it isn't, because it's the reasons why we're thinking something are often deeply rooted in other stuff that has happened to us. So, you get someone who has a dig at you, maybe who criticizes you, someone who you respect and you say that you love, says something to you that you find offensive. And before long, you've exploded. So rather than trying to find a way to resolve it, people often simply just explode. But in order to do that, they're thinking something which often has a derivative somewhere else. So there's a causal reason why someone may choose to explode in the way that they do. And I guess it's important to be able to understand what that might be for you and how that impacts your life, so that you can address that particular issue, so that you can deal with it, manage it, so that it isn't likely to happen again. So when we go back to this, we need to think of ways that we can alter our thoughts and our actions, as I was saying. So if someone says something to you that you find offensive, think about what it is that you are finding offensive and why that particularly is impacting you. And and where that really comes from. Is this person really important? Have they got the right facts anyway? Is it someone that really understands you or cares about you either? So how can I order those thoughts? Sometimes thoughts that are the ideas that are presented to us about who we are, frankly, sometimes are probably true. This is who we are, but we can't see it. Maybe there's some aspects of who we are we actually don't like ourselves, and that we would like to think could be changed. So that's just saying that there are things that need to be addressed. There are also so that's about, okay, this is what other people are saying about me, that perhaps I am a bully, perhaps those things should be changed. And someone might say to you, well, you don't love me. And you say, well, I do. What they're saying to you is that you're not expressing love to me in the way that I would like to feel loved, or I can't feel safe with the way that you express your love, which is an indication that you just need to find different ways to express it. So there are lots of things that need to change, and often counselling will help us to be able to change some of those things. So that when we think about it, we can also think about can I behave more differently, that is more respectful of this particular person, as opposed to behaving the way that I have been. So this means then that know and initiate productive ways to manage your feelings. So if we're feeling aggrieved for some particular reason, maybe we need to think about different ways of managing that sense of being aggrieved. And one of those ways is to talk to people about actually how we do feel and why we are feeling, and we're going to go into this later, why is it that I'm feeling the way that I am? So rather than responding in the way that you've normally responded, which is often negative, perhaps you need to initiate productive ways to manage those feelings differently. And the best way to do that is to get them out. And sometimes there is never a feeling that is irrational. The feeling is there because this is how you feel. But how to manage it is often a force of habit for most of us, which we need to find ways to simply do different. And sometimes we need to find productive ways to understand why it is that we feel. Most of the time, 100% of the time, I guess, we're responding to external forces on us that are changing how we think and how we particularly feel about ourselves. And we're responding to those feelings. So in order to be able to deal with how we're responding to those feelings, we need to understand where they come from, as I said before. And this is really important. So a fair bit of work has to be done in this area. It might seem rather simplistic, but it isn't. It is quite involved. If you've been put down, denigrated, dismissed as a child, and you find that as an adult those same feelings are present, then you're likely to respond to them in the same way that you used to respond to them when you were a kid. So for some children, they most certainly might have been passive, and so they choose to be passive to some extent as an adult, and suddenly it builds up until they can't deal with it anymore. Then they act it out by becoming aggressive. For some people, they might have been aggressive as a child when they were put down. No one ever heard them. No one ever understood what was happening for them. No one ever did anything about it. So as an adult, when that same thing happens, the same behaviours appear. So there's a number of ways that you could be starting to deal with this that are constructive, that are helpful to you, and particularly helpful to those people around you. So this brings us to how we need to visualise and look at anger itself. So as I think I said to you in one of our other sessions, anger is simply emotion, just like any other emotion that we have. It's a powerful emotion, and it's powerful for a number of reasons, and I'll discuss that in a moment. But primarily, it's just an emotion. It's a feeling, an intense feeling, but it is a feeling, right? So it's about understanding what the anger itself represents. And the best way to describe this is that it represents like an iceberg. So 90% of the feelings that we have are below the surface. It's the anger which is expressed in bad, unhelpful, aggressive, vicious, attacking type behaviour that people tend to see at the top. So when we're talking about anger at the top, people are identifying your behaviour as you being angry. That's what they see, right? So, it's like people identify what people can identify when you're being loving, when you're being caring, when you're being thoughtful, when you're being considerate. The reasons why people identify that is because they see it in your actions. But the same is true of anger. They see the anger in terms of your behaviour. This is what they're identifying. And a lot of people will say, that I saw you becoming angry long before you acted out in any way. So what they notice is the dilating of the eyes, your face perhaps going red, you're pacing up and down, the tone of voice might change. So there's a whole range of things that are likely to change, which are about people being aware of how you're about to behave. Right, so they see the anger often before you even recognise that you're feeling angry. It just comes out in these other ways. And it's, as we talked earlier about the early warning signs, it's important for you to identify exactly what those signs are so that you can understand when you're going to a place that's really unhelpful. So in terms of the anger iceberg, though, what we need to notice is that at the top is what people see. This is the anger. But underlying all of that sits a whole range of other feelings that really need to be identified and certainly need to be understood. So they did a survey many years ago, and they discovered that there are a number of feelings that men have in general, and they are hopelessness, helplessness, and powerlessness. So these are three primary emotions that men have who express their anger in unhelpful ways. And that it is those feelings that we need to understand so that we can lessen the degree to which we're angry. So if we have a range of beliefs, a range of feelings rather, about who we are, they are what people will eventually see. But those issues that sit underneath there, the loneliness, the helplessness, the hopelessness, the fear, the resentment, whatever it is, that is what needs to be dealt with. And so what I'm asking you to do is to think about what it is for you that sits underneath the anger. So what is the cluster of emotions that you carry with you? Now, the problem that most of us have with that is that we rarely understand or identify the emotions that we're experiencing. That to a large extent, we don't produce the vocabulary to discuss how it is that we're feeling. And one of the reasons for that is that as a society, us men in particular are told that we should, suppress our feelings, that men don't cry, boys don't cry, that we don't have anybody, particularly male role models in our life, who talk about how it is they feel about a range of things. And we don't identify the words to use to describe a range of feelings. So part of our exercise with when I'm working with groups, and I'm happy to send anybody this list, is a list of about 200 feeling words. And what we do is in those, we ask a person a question. So when such and such happens, I feel, and then we ask people to go through this list and work out what feeling words impact them when they think about that particular statement. And people come up with about 30 or 40 feeling words. They often come up with words they've never even thought of that relate to that particular statement that they've written down. So we're conditioned to think about just a number of words in relation to how it is that we feel. So we say, I feel hurt, I feel sad, I might say, I feel depressed, right? So normally we use 2 or 3 words interchangeably to describe how it is that we feel. The reality is that there could be hundreds of words which could better describe how we might feel about any particular incident that may happen to us. And those feelings that we have may sit back a long way in our lives. So it's not like it's a new feeling. Feeling betrayed, for example, for a lot of people is a feeling that sits back way back. To feel let down might be a feeling that they have felt for a long time. Disappointed might be another one. Resentful may be another. But they're not the words that they normally use. So if we use the word, say, hurt, for most things that have happened in our lives, then eventually hurt becomes less and less significant. Because if we're saying that we're hurt about everything or that we're sad about everything, the word hurt or sad does not accurately describe the feelings that we're experiencing. So we need to be able to find words that fit more with what our experiences are, because when you find a word that means everything to you, it describes beautifully, like unloved. So let's say we go through a relationship and we say that we're hurt and we're sad and we're resentful, whatever it is that we say, but at the end of the day, we're just feeling unloved. To unpack that word, where it sits in your life, how often in your life you have felt unloved, is significant. Because once, as we talked about in emotional programming, once we've understand that word, when we know what it means, we will then be able to change our behaviour forever. Where we understand what we've been doing and why we've been doing it and why we feel the way that we have been feeling, we will then be able to change our behaviour forever. So when you think of the anger cycle here, it is important to be able to list all the feelings that you have that sit underneath anger. Take out the words you would normally use. Don't use them. Just use words that you that you would not normally use. And so if you look up a psych page which just says feeling words, so go to a page that says feeling words, print out all those feeling words and then write a question at the top. When Jane walks away from me, I feel, and then write down all the feeling words that come from a statement like that and see what happens. I'm sure that you will find that there's a stack of feeling words that have meaning. And then what I say to people is, once you've got that list of 30 or 40 words, write down the top 10. So the 10 that resonate with you the most, write them on a list. Once you've got them written on a list, so you've got them all before you, then choose the top 5 with the 5 that hurts the most, the 5 that resonates with you the most. The first one is the one that you believe is the most significant feeling that affects you. And then you go down, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So from that 10, you take 5 with the one that resonates with you the most at the top. You'll be surprised what you'll come up with. You'll come up with a list of words that are about feelings that sit with you, not just about the event you've identified, but about a range of things that have happened in your life. That is helpful because with that knowledge, you'll be able to address those issues, and the anger and the distress and the behaviours will begin to diminish. And if you need to check any of that out, the best place to do it is in therapy. So see a psychologist or a social worker who has experience around working with people in terms of their emotions, and particularly with regard to certain behaviours such as that exemplified through anger. So I hope you've enjoyed this session, and I hope you enjoy us next time for session 5. And until then, take care, look after yourselves, and look after those people that love you the most. Bye.